Yo, welcome back to another video. Let's get right into it.
10 WWE wrestlers who actually upgraded their finisher. Number 10, The Miz. When The Miz first started out in WWE, his in-ring skills were definitely an issue. One of the things that was holding him back was the fact that his finishing move was atrocious. The Miz would initially go between two different finishing moves. These were the Wizard of Oz, what a terrible name, and the Reality Check. And the problem with these two moves was that they often looked awkward upon execution and didn't remotely look like a credible finishing move. However, when The Miz was brainstorming with Dean Malenko and Arn Anderson, it was decided that he would change his finisher and the Skull Crushing Finale was born. Whilst the Skull Crushing Finale is the most game-changing finisher in the world, it has the advantage of being able to be delivered virtually out of nowhere, and WWE and The Miz have done a tremendous job in keeping the move credible over the past 15 years. The Miz would discuss the significant upgrade of his finisher on TikTok, and this is what the former champion had to say. "I went with Dean Malenko and Arn Anderson, and every live event, every television Monday Night Raw, we would literally be just racking our brains on different finishers. He first came up with a knee DDT, which everyone thought was a half DDT, so no. Then the knee lift into the neck breaker, which was my former one, which I call the Reality Check. And they're like, that's just not a finisher. Then I re-upped it. What if I do it in one move? That didn't work for him either. Then one day Dean was like, why don't you try and do a full Nelson and sweep the front of his legs and see if that works? And we did it, everyone seemed to like it. I liked it because I could pretty much do it on everybody. And so that is how the Skull Crushing Finale was created. Number 9, Victoria. Victoria had a compelling gimmick and fantastic in-ring ability when she became a focal point of Raw in late 2002. However, her finishing move was letting her down. Victoria would go between different moves, and it looked like her primary finishing move was a snap suplex, as this would be the move that would win her the women's title at the annual Survivor Series event. Thankfully, Victoria would debut the Widow's Peak finisher on Stacy Keibler, and this would ultimately become one of the most popular finishing moves of the Ruthless Aggression era. The move looked brutal, and it looked like it could realistically defeat every single name in the women's division. One of the reasons as to why the move is so well remembered is that WWE committed to protecting the move as much as possible, and this is 99% of the time a formula that will get a finishing move over with a crowd. Number 8, Sheamus. During his run in the ECW brand, Sheamus was going through an identity crisis when it came to his finishing move. Sheamus would win matches with Ranger moves, yet his primary move was the High Cross, which would be Sheamus's version of the Razor's Edge. Whilst there was no denying that this is a legendary move, it was just taking way too long to set up, and by the time the move was executed, the crowd were already bored. This was just a sign of the times, as a late 2000s WWE crowd wanted fast-paced action, and they simply didn't have the time to sit through an extended finishing move. It was when Sheamus arrived on the main roster that he would eventually stick to the Bro Kick. This was the right move, as it was a devastating looking move, and it could be delivered on anyone of any size. The talented star had been using the move for 15 years in WWE, and whilst the WWE veteran still likes to use the High Cross for major matches, the Bro Kick is firmly established as his definitive finishing move. Number 7, John Cena. It's hard to imagine John Cena without an AA or STF. However, Cena didn't debut the AA until 2003, and this meant that Cena spent almost a year using a finishing move that fans didn't care for. Cena was using a move known as the Proto Bomb, and while Cena did the move well, it was just failing to get the crowd on board. Thankfully, in 2003, Cena would debut the AA, and although the AA isn't the most outlandish finishing move in WWE, it was and remains insanely over with the audience, which is always the most important element of a move. Number 6, Drew McIntyre. For the duration of Drew McIntyre's first WWE run, he would use the Future Shock DDT as his finishing move. Any wrestler who has the courage in the modern age to use a DDT variation deserves much praise. Yet McIntyre's version of the move was struggling to garner fan response, and the reaction to the move was often utter silence. When McIntyre returned to WWE in 2017, he would introduce the world to the Claymore Kick. This was in essence a kick out of nowhere, yet McIntyre delivered it with such an impact that it instantly got over, as the fans and have always loved finishing moves that can be hit out of nowhere. As things stand, the move is considered by many to be one of the most credible moves in all of WWE, as McIntyre has won countless world titles with the dastardly kick. McIntyre still opts to use the Future Shock DDT as a signature move, which is a smart call, as whilst the move definitely isn't as popular as the Claymore, it's without a doubt a legitimate move to have in an established moveset. Number 5, AJ Lee. It's always appreciated when a wrestler tries something new, and this is especially the case when it comes to a finishing move. When it comes to AJ Lee, her finishing moves early on in WWE weren't anything special, and she would go between a Shining Wizard and a sliced bread style finisher. However, when AJ debuted her Black Widow submission-based finisher, it was evident based on the crowd reaction that AJ had found the move that she was going to define her in-ring style. The move always received a pop upon delivery, and it also helped that the move looked legitimately painful. Number 4, Cody Rhodes. The Crossroads is a finishing move of Cody Rhodes, and it's the finishing move that won him the main event of WrestleMania. It may come as a surprise to newer WWE fans that Rhodes hasn't always used the move as his finisher. When Rhodes started off on the main roster, he would use a snap DDT as his finisher, and it would later be named the Silver Spoon DDT. Rhodes' version of the move was up there with the best DDT variations of that time period, yet due to the DDT being a transitional move in virtually every wrestling match, it didn't do Rhodes any favors. Eventually, Rhodes would debut the Crossroads, and even though this move has been done before on the main roster, it was the perfect move for Rhodes, and it's been his primary finishing move for over 15 years. Number 3, Triple H. Several years before his protege Randy Orton would start to use the RKO, Triple H would debut in WWE using a cutter-style finishing move. This is a great finishing move, and Triple H offered a great variation of the move, and it helped that nobody on the current roster was delivering a cutter at the time. However, at the time that Triple H debuted the move on TV, DDP was getting his version of the cutter over on WCW programming. Triple H and DDP had been friends for years, so DDP politely asked the game if he wouldn't mind finding a new finisher. Triple H agreed, and he decided to debut the Pedigree, and the move would become synonymous with Triple H's career, and it was without a doubt the right move to change things up. In relation to how the game came up with the move itself, this is what the multi-time WWE champion had to say during an interview with Fox Sports. It's interesting, the Pedigree for me started actually when I was training with Killer Kowalski. I had seen old-timers, a lot of old-timers. Kowalski used to do it in a spot where he'd put the guy's head between his knees and he would jump up and just kind of jar their neck. And it just dawned on me that if I kept going straight down to his knees, it was like sort of a version of a pile driver. And as I looked at it, I thought, well, if you held the guy's arms, it would be very clearly a pile driver, so it started out as that. A few years ago, I saw a clip of Andre the Giant doing a different version of it in Japan for the first time, so it was quite amazing for me to see something like that I had never seen before. So that's something very, very early in my career. When I first came into the WWE, they gave me a different finisher, a slightly different version of the RKO, and I wasn't enamored with it, and I went back to the Pedigree because it was what I had been using prior to that, and I really liked it. Number 2, Stone Cold Steve Austin. It made perfect sense for the ringmaster to use the $1 Million Dream submission move. However, when the character transitioned to the Stone Cold character, it really didn't fit, and Austin needed to debut something new. Austin would debut the Stunner in the summer of '96, and the audible gasp of the audience as Austin drove Savio Vega's head into his shoulder was a sign that the finisher was gonna get over real quick. The finishing move would be a key part in Austin connecting with the audience and became without a doubt one of the most popular moves in WWE history. And number 1, Randy Orton. Now there's a strong argument to be made that the RKO is the most famous move in wrestling. The move goes beyond pro wrestling, as even non-wrestling fans know what the RKO is and what legendary wrestler performs the move. Randy Orton's career would have been extremely different if he didn't debut the move in 2003, as before he was delivering his own version of the cutter he was using for one of the blandest, most uninspiring finishes imaginable. Orton would use the overdrive finishing move in 2002, and his version was known as the Ozone. The finishing move has had a negative reputation amongst fans, as it's seen by many as a default finisher, as it looks insanely bland and uninspiring. The move always looks weird upon delivery, and it definitely doesn't help that the move doesn't look like it hurts the opponent. Thankfully, the RKO was the biggest move upgrade of all time, as Orton has perfected the cutter, and not a single wrestler is ever going to be able to use the move without fans instantly comparing them to the WWE's Resident Viper. But there you have it, folks, 10 WWE wrestlers who actually upgraded their finisher. Be sure to leave your comments down below, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.
Alright, that's gonna complete the series. We looked at upgraded and downgraded in the past few videos, so that's the end of that series.